Module 8, the accepted offer. In the last module, we reviewed the strategies and important points in making an offer. In this module, we'll cover the steps to take once an offer is accepted. This involves coaching your buyer, making referrals, and preparing the Core 7 setup sheet. First, let's talk about preparing buyers once an offer is accepted. It's great news when everything comes together and the offer is accepted, but it's important to continue managing your buyer's expectations by reiterating the buyer remorse script used when the offer was made. When the offer goes under agreement, the first thing to say to your buyer after congratulations is, "This is really great news, but as we discussed earlier, please understand that it's likely you're going to have a bit of buyer's remorse in the morning. That's okay, and it's normal. In fact, the majority of all buyers actually have a little buyer's remorse. What you need to remember is that if there's a real problem, we have protections written into the offer, so you'll be able to get all your money back. So, not to worry. I can't overstate the importance of this scripting. If a buyer wakes in the morning with buyer's remorse, and they have not been coached, the risk of clients bailing out of the deal greatly increases. Next, it's critical to inform the buyer that the first 2 weeks of this process will be the most hectic of the transaction. As a side note, adjust this period based on your timeline. If you have a 4-week closing, the entire 4 weeks will most likely be hectic. If you have more of a traditional closing time of 6 to 8 weeks, the first 2 are the most hectic. Once you have prepared the buyer on what to expect, the next step is to make sure they do what is called a reconsultation with the lender. To that end, email both the lender and the buyer advising for the reconsult. The text of this email is on screen now, but a copy is located in the Resource Center. This is a great way to make sure your buyer continues to use your lender, as you are starting your lender right on the job. At this point, it's also time to refer the real estate attorney. The critical time to make this introduction is at the offer. As a realtor, you know you'll be working very closely with your real estate attorney or escrow officer on the purchase and sale, so it's important to get them in at this point. The introduction is also included in the body of this email. Now remember, in your buyer's meeting you asked, "Do you have a local real estate attorney?" So the process of referring was actually started then. Now, every state has different processes. Some states use escrow companies, and some states use attorneys. So refer the attorney or escrow company accordingly. Let's take a minute to look at some possible scenarios for this referral. First, let's assume that you're referring an attorney, but your buyer wants to use a family friend who specializes in another area of law. To protect the buyer's best interest, this is something to head off right away. You can't have a criminal attorney, for instance, doing real estate law. You need someone who specializes in real estate. Another scenario is to expect the client to ask why they should use your real estate attorney rather than finding one on their own. It's a legitimate question, and the buyer may not see the benefit to them initially. To explain why it is in their best interest, I explain it this way. "That's a great question, Mr. Jones. Now, I prefer that you use an attorney who I work with because communication is really important. It's completely up to you who you hire. I can only tell you that in my experience, when you hire a team who has worked together, most of the problems that come up, which are normal and occur often in a transaction, are handled by the team, so they don't even get to you. The reason is that since we communicate regularly about so many transactions, we are very comfortable with each other. If you hire an attorney I haven't worked with before, then we don't have that baseline of communication built up already. Invariably, it won't be as good for you and could even be more stressful for you." Speaking of referrals, be aware that some buyers may ask if you receive financial compensation for the people you refer. This is a legitimate question from the buyer's perspective. The answer is no, and you need to be unequivocal about it. No, I don't get any financial benefit from using my team. What I do get is great service for my clients, and that means if we need to do a home inspection at a certain time, because it's my home inspector, who I use for all my inspections, my clients and I receive priority scheduling. The same goes for my attorney and my lender partners. Because I talk with them all the time, you're going to get better service and have a better team around you. When there are so many people in the transaction who don't know each other, invariably, communication suffers and balls get dropped. So it's really in your best interest to use my whole team. As we covered earlier, when you negotiate an offer, it's a good idea to send the listing sheet to the lender. This proactive step helps move the process forward once the offer is accepted. Once the property is under agreement, The next step is to do the Core 7 setup sheet. A copy of it is in the Resource Center for your use. This sheet details everyone involved in the transaction: buyer, seller, buyer's agent, listing agent, lender, seller's attorney, buyer's attorney, closing attorney, and all the dates and terms are on a single sheet. This tool makes it really easy for everyone in the transaction to know what's going on. In my own business, I have received really great feedback on the Core 7 setup sheet from so many mortgage processors. I've been told that my team's loan files are prioritized because they're so well organized and all the necessary information is right there, making it easy for them to process. Normally, mortgage processors have to chase after the information. Having a loan profile prioritized and the transaction simplified for everyone is also a huge benefit to convey to your buyer. The next step is to set an alarm for 2 days before the mortgage contingency in your contact management system so that you can follow up and stay in front of the process. If a 3-week contingency is used, it's even more critical to follow up 2 days in advance. The chances of an extension are higher in this case, so it's critical to be more sensitive to informing everyone well in advance should this happen. Last-second extension requests can make everyone nervous. To review, in this module, we covered steps you need to take once the offer is accepted. The first of these steps is preparing your buyer to expect to feel some buyer's remorse and to expect that the weeks until the closing will be the most hectic in the transaction. We also reviewed the referrals to make, scenarios to expect, and how to handle any pushback. Finally, we discussed why using the Core 7 setup sheet can be so beneficial. In the next module, we'll move on to negotiating the purchase and sales agreement.